Well, hello there, Dippers, and welcome back to the Knuckle Sammich podcast. It is round 24, and we are officially going to start talking McGregor and Khabib. Guys, as always, I'm your host, Drake, joined by the man, the myth, the legend, Mr. Thomas R. Shackelford.
Welcome back.
Guys, today we're gonna kind of spice things up on this show. So we always have the producer in, and he usually gives you his 10 seconds of sweat, but we're not gonna have him break down any actual fights today as far as head-to-head matchups for this weekend. We are actually gonna do something different. We right now have him at the computer screen watching a Khabib fight. Shackelford and I have been talking a little bit about, Khabib's past and how, he has this unblemished record. It's, perfect record. And we think that he's dropped a fight. We thought that he had lost to Gleedson Tibau back quite a few fights ago. But we're actually going to have our producer, Leighton C., watch this fight live during the show, and he's going to update us round by round what he thinks. He's going to pick his winner, because we all know, as history has made it, Khabib won by a unanimous decision, 30-27. So every so often, you're going to hear him kind of chime in during the show, just give updates on the fight. But we have a very jam-packed show. We're going to talk about the card last week in Brazil, kind of hit on that a little bit. We're actually going to talk about the Bellator Grand Prix 170-pound division. Break that down a little bit. They kick off this weekend at Bellator 206, and Shackelford actually has an underdog pick for you. He's saying that this guy has a chance to win it all. He's a dark horse, and the odds are great. So call your bookie up. Get ready. Leighton C., bring the noise. Welcome to the Knuckle Sammich podcast with Thomas R. Shackelford, a sauce on the side production. All right, so we're going to go ahead and talk about this past weekend. UFC Fight Night. It was in Sao Paulo. Pretty good night of fights. We got to see Cowboy Oliveira pick up a 39-second KO. Charles Oliveira actually picked up the submission record for most submissions in the UFC octagon. Little Nog picked up a knockout of Sam Alvey. Thiago Santos basically beat Eric Anders by exhaustion. It was a very odd night, very good night of fights. Shackelford, we'll just start it off. What fight impressed you the most? I think I know where you're going with this.
It's got to be the Anders versus Santos fight. We talked last week that the common sense picked Santos just due to the short turnaround, the very short notice. But I'll tell you what, had that been a full camp, I think Anders wins that pretty easy. The fight was unbelievable. Basically, the round started off with Anders pressured the whole time. Santos would kind of unload his wild striking for 10, 20, 30 seconds, a minute. Anders would weather the storm, get a takedown or strike when Santos got a little tired. And each round went like that. It almost went like, oh man, Santos is really jumping out ahead. The next thing you know, Anders crept back up with a takedown, some ground and pound. And it went like that the whole time. And basically the fight ended in between the fourth and fifth rounds, I believe. They called it a third round TKO, but the third round had ended. Anders couldn't walk back to his corner. He stood up, he kind of crumpled. His cornerman came and helped him up a couple times. And he was trying to make it back to his corner, and basically just exhaustion got him.
Yeah, and that's a bummer. You and I had talked about it. That should have been a 3-round fight. I don't care that it is your main event, and you always say, hey, main events are going to be 3 or 5 rounds no matter what. But you have two guys that are 185-pound fighters fighting a weight class up, both on short notice. Why not just bend the rules a little bit, give us a 3-round fight? That way we don't see it end by a guy just being exhausted because he's taking the fight on a week's notice. Do you think that that's something that the UFC should have stepped in and done?
They should have. I know once they went to that format of all main events get 5 rounds, in my eyes, it shouldn't be a clear-cut thing like that. This should have been a 3-round fight, just for the safety of Anders and just
common sense.
It'd have been it was an amazing fight, but 3 rounds that would have put them both in the spectrum of, hey, we both have the cardio for this. I would have been happy with 3 rounds.
Yeah, especially since there wasn't a belt on the line.
Yeah, and both guys fighting at 205. Santos plans to stay up at 205, which I think he's got a good case. He's really muscled up for an 85-pounder. He has a win over Smith, who's really came on the scene the last couple fights at 205. 205's not nearly as tough as 85 right now, so it's a good fit for him. I think Anders plans to go back down to 85, which is good. But he actually looked bigger than Santos. He had a little more fluff on him, but
a little more love on him.
That's just the nature of the beast. This loss, nobody's talking about Santos. Nobody. They're all talking about Anders. For a guy that's 11-1. He's had one main event slot before. He fought like an old pro. He knew when to put his hands up and weather the storm. He knew when to get the takedown. He knew when to strike. It was a beautiful performance. It reminds me a lot of just a few fight cards ago, Leon Edwards fought Donald Cerrone. And we talked about how Leon Edwards, huge guy, athletic guy, southpaw, strong puncher. He was everything that it's Cowboy's kryptonite. And Cowboy basically hung around in the fight just using old veteran tricks of the same thing, knowing when to cover up, knowing when to take down, knowing when to strike when the guy's tired. That's what Anders looked like. And I'm telling you right now, none of the MMA media outlets, none of the podcasts, none of those guys were talking about Santos. They're talking about the heart, the determination, all the stuff with Anders. So you couldn't get a better loss ever. I mean, it just doesn't come back.
Yeah, very rarely we talk about guys winning the night after a loss, but I mean, Eric Anders went out there, gave it his best, still wasn't able to win, but I think the needle moved in the right direction for him.
I liked him before. He's going to be one of my favorite fighters from now on. Just watching him, just watching that fight, it was just a beautiful fight to watch. And then just knowing this is a young kid he was playing pro football 3 years ago. He's not been a fighter his whole life.
Yeah.
He's and this happens sometimes. You get these athletes that cross over and they can be good at fighting, but they're not fighters.
And when OSP comes to mind instantly.
Yes.
Because OSP has that athleticism. Yeah. He's good at fighting, but he doesn't have that fight instinct.
Yeah. Anders is the complete opposite. He is an athletic freak. Probably should be. I discussed this the other day with someone. He probably would still be playing in the NFL if he didn't get drafted by the Browns. He went to the Browns and got browned, and he'd probably still be in the NFL, to be honest. So, man, the kid's got a lot of heart. Can't wait to see him back down at 85.
Yeah, I agree. Eric Anders, I think he won the night. A guy who I think was probably the biggest loser of the night, Renan Barão, misses weight by 6 pounds, which is a huge amount to lose weight or miss weight from. Ends up losing a split decision to Andre Ewell. What do you think's next for Renan Barão? Do you think that he needs to move up in weight, or this is just so bizarre to me?
This guy, he missed it. Yeah, he missed it by 6 pounds. Looked like he just didn't give a shit on the scale. I mean, he just stood there. It didn't look like he cared at all that he missed weight. And then in his fight, he dropped it to. That was Ewell's very first fight in the UFC. He's a tough kid. Really good striking. He outstruck Barão. I don't know what happens to Barão. This guy, and the speculation can be made about USADA. When USADA came in, he started missing weight, and his performances, he went from the best guy in the world that nobody can touch him to can't make weight, and a guy that just walks onto the scene in Brazil beats him pretty handily. It wouldn't have been a split decision if it wasn't in Brazil.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know what to do about him.
I don't either. I don't know what's going to be next for him, because I feel like it's one of those times where they're going to try to push him up against the wall and say, hey, 6 pounds, inexcusable. You need to go up. So any other big takeaways for the night? I think we're both in agreement that Hinnenbrau is probably the biggest loser of the night. Biggest winner, probably Eric Anders, even though he picked up a loss. Any other takeaways from the night?
Yeah, we got, like you had mentioned, Cowboy Oliveira gets a 39-second KO. Looked really good. That dude's always going to be fun to watch. Charles Oliveira breaks the Hoist Gracie submission record. Mr. Jekyll and Hyde, he's been Dr. Jekyll. Which one's the tough one? Now I forgot.
Jekyll or Hyde?
Hyde's the mean one, right?
Hyde's the mean bastard.
Okay, so he's been Hyde his last couple fights. He keeps claiming he's going to go back down to featherweight. I don't know why. He's looking killer at 55. Then we got to be honest, close to the biggest loser of the night would be Sam Alvey. The dude doesn't belong at 205. He's as chubby as I am.
Right.
To be honest, I mean, he's chubby for 205.
But he's showing us ways how to lose weight.
Yes, whatever Lockhart stuff he's doing is not working. He needs to be at 85. He needs to be smart about some of his fights. I was a little worried about this matchup. You guys that don't know Nogueira, Nogueira was a super tough guy. When Shogun and Vanderlei were ruling Pride at 205, he had some razor-thin decision losses against Shogun. He used to train with the Cuban Olympic boxing team. He's not as known for his submissions like his older brother. He was always known for his killer boxing, and he boxed Alvey up. Now, Alvey did touch him once or twice in that first round, but then Nog he just put a beating on Alvey. I've never seen Alvey stopped like that. So, and to me, that was Alvey's first real test against a real gritty guy that's a really good boxer at that weight class, and he felt the power, unfortunately. And Alvey's a guy that, he's played with his weight a lot. He started at 170 in the UFC, and now he's made his way up to 205. He needs to go back to 85. He's got a name. A lot of people love him. He's known as Smiling Sam, but he has got to get back to 85 smartly and safely. Now, if that means leaving the Lockhart stuff, whatever he's got to do, but he won't.
That would be smart.
He won't win.
You said smartly, so he needs to get away from Lockhart.
He won't have a lot more wins at 205.
No, I definitely agree with you there. So we'll go ahead and look at the Bellator card this weekend.
Oh, shoot. Hold on, one more thing. I forgot to say, Talis Lathis and Evan Dunham also both retired. One on a win, one on a loss. Kind of weird to see them go. They've been around since Evan Dunham. I remember him. You remember Sean Shirk?
Oh, yeah.
55-pound champ at one time.
The Muscle Shark.
The Muscle Shark. After BJ Penn beat him for the title, I want to say his next fight back was against Dunham, who was at that time just a young kid. Nobody really knew him. And a lot of people thought he won that fight against Shirk. He's had a lot of wins and losses. He beat some really good guys at the time. Tyson Griffin comes to mind. Like I said, damn near beat Sean Shirk when he was at his best at 55. Really, when I think of the Las Vegas fighting scene, I think of Evan Dunham, Tyson Griffin, a lot of those guys at that time around 2006, 7, 8, around in there. So a little bummed to see him go, and especially off a KO loss. And then Talis Lathis also retired on a win, which he's a guy that I'm happy to see them both go. It was time for both of them. Even though Lathis could probably pick up some more wins at 85, it's time.
Right.
Boys, well, I finished pointing out of this fight finally.
Okay.
What year did this fight take place?
I believe 2012, wasn't it?
It's been a couple of years.
So it's 5 years ago. Okay, and this is the same weight class.
Yeah, 55.
Because Gleason looks like the old alcoholic dad who works 5 to 5s at the tire factory. His wife just left him, and he just had enough of Khabib's bullshit coming home after midnight. So Khabib walks in, his dad being Gleason throws an empty bottle of Jack Daniels at him, pushes against the wall, and then just manhandles him for 5 minutes. I don't know. Khabib looked like he tried to do some up against the Finn stuff, but Gleason wasn't having it. And then Yamasaki, whatever the Japanese referee's name is, kept picking up all the Finn stuff. So first round, kind of uneventful, but Gleason kind of just big brothered him, or in this case, dadded him for the first round. So we'll see where this goes from here.
Okay, so Leighton C's final first round judgment. 10-9 round. I guess Leighton's probably not up to date with the scoring system, but Big Brother, round 1, goes to Gleason Thibault. So we'll go ahead and talk about Bellator here. Bellator actually is kind of doing really well this weekend. Very big names on the 170 Grand Prix. We got Rory McDonald, Douglas Lima, John Fitch, Neiman Gracie, Ed Ruth, Lawrence Larkin, and MVP actually fights Paul Daly. So very big names, very fun card from what I look at. Has the possibility to have great fights all the way through. This first weekend, what are you looking for this weekend in the Grand Prix? And ultimately, who do you think is going to be the winner of this?
Well, just to clarify, there's only... So, Bellator 206 is this weekend. Rory McDonald's actually fighting Gegard Mousasi.
He's fighting Mousasi?
At 185. So, this isn't even his tournament fight.
Oh, wow.
That's why I'm not picking him to win the tournament, because he's about to fight probably top 3 best 185 pounders in the world, and then he's got to turn around in a month and a half and fight John Fitch. So the Bellator 206 is this weekend. The fight that kicks off the 170 tournament is Douglas Lima, the former champ at that weight class, against Koreshkov. I'm going to pick Lima for this one. I really like Douglas Lima. Had an amazing fight with Rory McDonald. Just barely lost his belt. I'm going to pick Lima to win this one and move on, and he'll face the winner of Paul Daly and MVP. To be honest, I think that's easy pickings for MVP, so I see Lima versus MVP on that side of the bracket, and I'm going to pick Lima to make it to the finals on the left-hand side of the bracket. The right-hand side of the bracket is Neiman Gracie versus Ed Ruth. And that one, Neiman Gracie is basically a 100% jiu-jitsu player. He doesn't have any hands. He's not a super powerful guy. Just really your classical jiu-jitsu guy. Like if you think of like a Hoist Gray, he basically fights like a Hoist or a Henzo. Like kind of a little wild with his hands, just trying to get it down. Not the best wrestler, but once you get to the ground, it's almost lights out. And that leads us to the dark horse, who I'm actually going to pick to win the entire tournament, a young kid named Ed Ruth. Now, if you know wrestling, you know Ed Ruth.
Absolutely.
Penn State badass. I think he was a 3-time NCAA champ.
He trains with weed socks on, too. I've been watching... I follow him on Instagram.
He trains with what?
So if you're a big wrestling fan, you're a big Ed Ruth fan. And, I've been following Ed Ruth on Instagram for quite some time. And I saw a training video. He does a lot of... most of the stuff that he posts is just, like, shadow boxing and, like, just basically body control and stuff like that, which if you ever watch him wrestle, you'd know that he's phenomenal at. And... this last week, or I think it was a few weeks ago, he had the classic all black with the little green weed leaves all over his socks. I was dying laughing. I'm like, if USADA gets their hands on this video, he's going to be getting tested every week.
He's done.
But yeah, so a little fun fact of Ed Ruth. But I love that dark horse pick. I do.
I didn't look at the odds. You didn't pull up what the payout or whatever would be on that.
So right now, if you took Ed Ruth, $1,200 plus $1,200, so every dollar is $12. $100 is $1,200. So I love that.
Yeah,
I love those odds. You can't get better odds.
What's that? You put in 50 and you get 600.
So yeah, Yeah, 50 to 600 payout.
That's almost a no. That's a no-brainer. If you're a betting person, that's a no-brainer. And I'll tell you why. Ed Ruth, we talked about there's different style of wrestlers. There's Woodley's a power wrestler. Like once he gets his hands wrapped around you, or he gets a double. A guy like Koscheck, those are power wrestlers. That stuff can be defended against, and it can be defended against when they're tired and when they're getting the older they are, their reflexes aren't as good. That can be defended against. Ed Ruth wrestled for the greatest American wrestler of all time, Cael Sanderson. He is an insanely powerful guy, but he's also one of the most technical guys you will ever see. The kid's a wizard. I don't see Neiman Gracie being able to get him down, and Ed Ruth is a powerful puncher. He's had some stoppages via punch.
He's 6-0 in MMA, and he all but one of his fights has been a finish. He's either knocked him out, TKO, 5 of his 6 fights. So he's not even having to really use his wrestling, which is phenomenal.
When I look at the names in this bracket that might give him trouble, you think Douglas Lima and Rory McDonald. Like I said, Rory he's fighting Mousasi this week. I don't even know if he's going to make it to his tournament fight. That's why they have the Lorenz Larkin is fighting somebody to be an alternate. So I would almost be surprised if McDonald made it in. But McDonald's good at that long, rangy punches. Not a powerful puncher, but long, rangy jab. And his wrestling, he isn't going to take Ed Ruth down.
Absolutely not.
I guarantee
that. And 2 of Ed Ruth's stoppages have been at 190 pounds.
I guarantee Ed Ruth punches as hard as Robbie Lawler. And we look at the guy that basically made Rory quit on the stool. That was Robbie Lawler. And I know Ruth hits harder than Robbie, and it's more technical. He's not going to get taken down. I see Rory, if he makes it to the tournament, beating Fitch pretty easy, and I'm seeing Ed Ruth and Douglas Lima in the final, and I'm still going to go with Ruth. I like that dark horse pick a lot.
I love that dark horse pick, especially because his second fight's going to be against MVP. If you draw up the tournament how you think it's going to go, he's going to fight MVP, and he's like MVP is going to be like a fish out of water on the ground. And Ed Ruth,
no, MVP's on the other side of the bracket.
Oh, he's on the other side.
Yeah, Ruth. MVP's on the Lima side.
Oh wow!
So I think Lima and MVP are going to meet up in the semis, and Ruth and McDonald will end up in the semis if McDonald even makes it to the tournament fight.
Wow, dude! I think you have to take that bet then. You have to take that bet now.
Yeah.
And a good little pro tip: if Ed Ruth makes it to the finals and you've got $50 on him to win 600, if he makes it to the finals, you can hedge your bet, and you can have a night where you're guaranteed not to lose any money.
Yeah.
And bet against him, throw a little bit on the other side. But I'm definitely taking Ed Ruth. I love that pick. I think Ed Ruth, if you just look at the fact that he has the knockout power with his hands, he's not going to get out-wrestled by anybody in that division in the world. I'm talking UFC, Bellator, whatever you have, he's not going to get out-wrestled there. So I'm going to be all over Ed Ruth. I can promise you that.
I think the other thing to remember is he did wrestle for the best American wrestler of all time. And Penn State's known for their I don't want to say like their scientific approach, but they have training down to a T. That you're not gonna go. Some wrestling camps like Iowa, they're running stairs while carrying 30-pound dumbbells and just like this. That's the Iowa way. This insanity workout. That's not Penn State. That's not Cael. That's not how he raises those kids. It's smart. They're working insanely hard, but they're doing it a smart way. So there's no reason to think that Ed Ruth is not taking that same knowledge that he had at the best wrestling camp in the world and moving it over to his striking, his jiu-jitsu. I'm so big on this kid. When I heard he was in MMA, I was a little worried. Bubba Jenkins is a guy that came out and was real hot at first, and he's kind of faltered a little bit. Still really good. There's been some other ones. Honeycut was his name. wrestled in the finals a few years ago. He came out kind of the same thing. There's been some really good wrestlers that came into MMA, but they just don't have what Ed Ruth has.
Yeah,
I don't know if I could convince anybody of anything, but if there's a guy that I could say this dude is going to be a world champ in 2 years, Ed Ruth would probably be my guy to pick.
And it's the athleticism, I think, that puts him over the edge because he's a freak of an athlete.
Yeah.
So, a lot of wrestlers don't have that, and he has that athleticism. Like, he has that A++++.
He's got the Woodley athleticism with the technical and smart wrestling of like a Ben Askren or something.
Absolutely.
Whereas Askren's got that super technical game, but he's strong as hell, I guarantee you. But even he says like he runs like a 6'3", 40 or something. The athleticism isn't there.
Yeah.
Ed Ruth is a good mix of both.
Yeah, I agree. Basically, Eric Anders, if he was a world-class wrestler,
yeah,
is the way I view Ed Ruth.
Guys, I got another round of
Okay.
this fight. Getting a little long for me. I know.
10 minutes. I can't believe you watched all 10 minutes.
Man, it's dragging. It's dragging ass pretty hard. But before we start, will you guys please say Khabib's last name?
Nurmagomedov is what I pronounce it.
Nurmagomedov.
Okay,
Nurmagomedov.
that's a lot.
Quit saying it. You're messing me up.
So, round 2 starts, and Khabib knows Dad's pissed. Like Khabib really messed up this. Khabib really messed up this time. And I also really want to know Gleason's arm workout because his freaking triceps on the side like my thighs. Is Gleason like one of the best fighters ever? Because
what's crazy is Gleason, I think, holds maybe the UFC win record. The dude's been around for like 10 years. He's fought all the best guys, and he's got a really good record. He is probably one of the best ever, but he has some losses in there.
yeah, because he's just like absolutely owning Khabib through 2.5 rounds. I thought Khabib was supposed to be some kind of like absolute animal. And at one point in the time in the fight, I think he just got tired of fucking around with Khabib and did a bull rush, like a bear hug takedown. And he threw Khabib all the way across the ring into the fence and stood back up and kind of ran back on. Then Khabib went for an uppercut on Dad, and Dad just ducked it, grabbed him by the waist, and threw him to the ground. So through a 2 round, I don't know the scoring system in this sport, but Gleason's winning, 20-0, 2018?
2018.
2018, Gleason through 2 rounds. We'll see what happens in the last round.
Actually, the next fight that Gleason actually lost, to kind of bring things full circle, was to Evan Dunham.
Was it really?
Yes, it was.
So that kind of goes to show you, he, in my opinion and everybody's opinion, he beats Khabib, who's supposed to be world.
Hey, I'm not there yet.
Okay,
He doesn't know the ending. He doesn't know the
What
ending.
happened to this? I have a pretty,
Shout out to Evan Dunham.
I have a pretty strong feeling after watching 1.5 rounds of this, but 2 rounds. Fuck ever. But we'll see what happens.
All
All
right.
right, so
Let's get
guys,
back to Bellator 206.
Okay, so would you say that Ed Ruth? I think Ed Ruth's going to kind of manhandle Neiman Gracie. I think it's going to be like Leighton said, the big brother.
As long as Gracie doesn't slip in, the kid, he's got some jiu-jitsu, and he trains, I believe, in New York with that really good Henzo Gracie team, who's really known for their leg lock game. That's what worries me. Is Neiman Gracie just goes full on flying leg scissors, heel hook type submission on Ruth. Other than that, I think he wins this match pretty easy.
I think that if Ed Ruth is because I think the only way Ed Ruth's going to lose in this is from some fluky thing, and I think that's exactly what you're leaning towards. So basically, just full breakdown again. You think that if Rory McDonald is able to fight in the Grand Prix, which he does have the tough fight this weekend, you think Ed Ruth versus Rory McDonald on their side in the semifinals, and then Lima versus MVP. You think Lima, Ed Ruth in the finals with Ed Ruth winning the Grand Prix.
I do.
Okay, I agree with you. I think that Ed Ruth, whatever route it's going to take, I think Ed Ruth's going to get the job done. So we'll switch and not actually talk about like actual fights this weekend or anything. Let's kind of break down the Conor versus Khabib press conference. So whenever you have a Conor fight, the main thing that I always look up to leading into a Conor fight is how the other person kind of handles the Mystic Mac aura. And it can be true. In all of Conor's fights, everybody's kind of gotten shaken by the aura, except for maybe Nate Diaz, who's given him his best fights. So in this press conference, what did you see in the presser that makes you lean either that Khabib is A, either phased by this, or B, is the stone cold killer that we've seen for years and not phased at all?
He handled it better than most. You know, we talked about Poirier, just same thing. Poirier was going to try and kill him, and even, you know, another guy that's really a stoic guy was the German.
For all of you that cannot see, Latency is now laughing at this fight. So I'm sure he'll break it down here in a minute. But what were you saying?
The German Dennis Siever was another guy that's always a real stoic guy, and he was getting pissed at Conor. So this press conference, it was to steal a line from Chael Sonnen when he broke it down. Khabib was going to be outmanned no matter what. This isn't really his thing. So his really only option was to be the stone cold guy that we kind of know him as, or that people portray him as. Whereas Conor really had only two options to come into this. And the way Chael put it was, he could have either came in with a bottle of NyQuil and been just as stoic and as boring as Khabib, or he could come in with a machine gun.
What about a bottle of Proper 12?
When he brought, this was a sales pitch for Proper 12, which apparently worked, because if you're watching Twitter or some of the other guys talk, nobody can find any bottles because you bought 16 of them. They're sold out in Southern Illinois. You can't find them. So he mixed.
I'll bring some in for whenever we break down the fight.
You
next
should
week.
have. I was expecting to drink some, but he mixed in his promotion of his drink with a little bit of his McGregor promotions at first, and I thought, well, you know, this isn't really going to affect Khabib, and probably about 5-10 minutes in, Khabib was still fine, but then Conor started bringing up some stuff, and the stuff he brought up has way bigger implications in the world, in the geopolitical sphere than just this fight, which I think is what got under Khabib's skin. Because once he got under Khabib's skin, and we know he did because Khabib snapped at a reporter, and then he was kind of getting flustered with Dana saying next question whenever he kept asking Conor a question. We know he got a little flustered, and the things that Conor brought up, I made a little list of them. So we talked about some of these guys that Khabib knows or he's influenced with or he's friends with. These guys are some serious dudes. And when I say serious dudes, I mean like you watch John Wick and you see these guys. We're talking some serious Russian dudes that are not good. The first one was I think it's Ramzan Kadyrov. He's the guy I was telling you about that had Fedor's family beat up. He's actually the president of Chechnya. Super, super, super crazy political leader. He's obviously the president. The dude has his own army. It's like a 300,000 man army. He's the one that runs the Kadyrov MMA club. HBO, Brian Gumbel actually did a special on him. He's the dude that's talked about trying to eradicate homosexuality out of the Russian people by just killing them off. And he's the one. What actually got Fedor in trouble is Kadyrov holds these kids MMA fights, like 6, 5, 4, 7, 8-year-old kids. And there's a video of his son out there just beating the dog shit out of another kid. And that's what Fedor spoke up against. And 2 days later, I can't remember if it was his sister or his wife, but one of them got beat half to death. And Fedor ain't ever said another word again. That dude he didn't post a picture with Khabib's dad. He posted a picture of Khabib's dad in a mosque, and it said, "We are stronger together." Now, Chechnya Chechnya and Dagestan are two different countries. You know, all those countries got broken up. The USSR got broken up. They're two different countries. Not particularly, they're two totally different countries. But that was kind of like a political move for him to do that. And there, if you speak out against that dude, you have to apologize, or bad things happen to you type thing. So when Connor brought that up, and he kept saying like your dad showed fake love and support for him out of fear as opposed to standing up against him, that's when Khabib started getting a little flustered. Well, then the second guy he brought up was Zayzadhan Magomedov, who's a Russian oligarch. He actually was friends with Putin in Dagestan. This dude's like a bajillionaire over there. He made it was called Eagles MMA. He made an Eagles MMA club and named Khabib the president of it.
The Eagle.
The Eagle.
Which
it
makes
was named
sense.
after him. And that guy was really big in Dagestan, helping a ton of fighters and athletes out in Russia with money. He paid for surgeries of several fighters. This dude's more like a really, really rich politician that loves sport and is helping people out, but isn't necessarily the super dirty, like in madman dictator. Well,
Oh man, I cannot remember the guy's name. Do you remember the guy who was shoveling in all the money for the Miami football? Shapiro. Basically a Shapiro.
This guy's like Shapiro, whoever Shapiro is. This dude's paying for a lot of stuff, doing all this, and he was Putin's buddy. Well, something happened just within this year. He got arrested. He's sitting in jail. They won't post a bond. He's sitting in jail waiting a trial. Basically, they found out he embezzled. Connor said something like $150 million.
Wow.
Embezzled that. Putin put him in. And we know he's connected, Khabib. He was friends with Khabib, but Khabib, one of his last fights, I don't remember if it was Barboza or Michael Johnson, he was speaking in English post-fight, and then he switched over to Russian. And when it's translated, he was begging Vladimir Putin to let his brother out of jail.
I remember that because he didn't say what it translated to.
Yeah, exactly. Rogan said, can you translate that?
He said,
to
"Just
English?"
help my brother."
Yeah.
That's all he said.
So that's what Connor was talking about whenever he said, the money. You're the one fighting for money because the money's all gone. Then he really started getting worked up, and those two are the only two that came up in the press conference, and Khabib started getting mad. Now his face, you could tell he was getting irritated, and you could tell he's getting irritated because, in politics, when you start asking the other politicians on stage questions, they don't have to answer, and when they don't answer, you look like kind of a dummy. That's how Donald Trump got elected. He'd be like, "Oh." I forget the names he had for all those guys, but it was hilarious. He would call them a name, and they'd be like, "Well, Donald this, Donald that," and he'd just be like, he'd say some bullshit, wouldn't answer. That's essentially how he got elected. He won those because he knew this. Well, that's how Connor won. The thing that really stuck out to me was when that reporter came up and he said, Khabib, assalamu alaikum, congratulations on your championship. Connor, congratulations on your whiskey. And Khabib goes, "You cannot say assalamu alaikum and then congratulate whiskey. Cannot do this." And then he puts the mic down and Connor's like, "Ooh, what are you gonna do? Go smack him. He's disrespecting you. What are you gonna do?" And then he's like, "Thank you, to the reporter. Thank you, assalamu alaikum. I'm glad you're here." Like, it just totally flipped the switch. And man, Khabib, we've seen him get a little bit, I don't want to say flustered in fights, but we've seen him get emotional in the fights. We've seen him get emotional post-fight speech. But we've never seen him emotional before the fight. We've never seen him act like that before. Connor got to him.
See, in the thing... you got... fight breakdown time.
Sorry to interrupt you, but I have finished this marathon of the fight. The third round starts. Khabib wants to go home, but Dad's just not done peppering his head yet. Dad is 100% fine with Khabib pushing him against the fence. He'll just stand there with his meat hooks of arms around him. And you get him rip shot. What I was laughing at is at the 2 minute 52 second mark of the third round, Dad goes for a takedown, and Khabib stops it. Full on stops it by lowering his shoulder down into Dad's face, But Dad would not beat the Toad and just full-on bull rushes Khabib to his back, and then gets his back, and then stands him back up, and then boom, back to the fence. And at this point, Khabib is just, in my opinion, I thought Khabib was just waiting for the bell. And then Khabib gets a few shots of Dad in the final minute, but Dad, not to be outdone by his son, gets a few more in just before the bell rings. And then a fight, Khabib raises his hand. So, going into the decision, I thought, well shit, Khabib got his ass beat. But no, Khabib won by unanimous decision.
Didn't lose a round.
Unanimous decision, Khabib won that fight. I don't know how. I have watched now I watched a pretty good amount of fights, so you don't like this sport very much. I have never seen somebody get their ass beat that bad and win a fight still.
Neither have I. Well, I have.
And you know
Thomas, please explain to me how Khabib won that fight.
I can't explain it. I had never seen that fight before, and when I started this breakdown for this fight, I said I'm watching every single Khabib fight. I watched every Khabib fight from his very first fight in the UFC all the way to his last one. He lost that fight. He clearly lost that fight. The announcers are saying he lost the fight.
Yeah, you couldn't hear it, but Joe Rogan actually, halfway through that last round, said, Khabib is a very good prospect, and he's going to have a good career, but I think Gleedson was actually too big of a test for him this early on.
He said something like, barring any kind of crazy decision, Gleedson was just too much for him.
Do you guys think the Russian mob had anything to do with this fight?
I'm not saying. Did you just hear what I was saying about all that shit?
I couldn't really concentrate on it, but I heard most of it. Yeah.
I don't want to say yes on that, but you never know.
Yeah,
I mean,
this is a little prelude to next week for my consecutive sweat where I do my full fight preview. But that is going to be my decision on who's going to win that fight.
I'm glad, because when I rewatched all of them, I mean, Khabib's beat some tough guys. Pat Bam Bam Healy, I thought would give him a tough time. Gleason, I obviously thought would give him a tough time. RDA. Like I talked about a few weeks ago, it's amazing how we rewrite history so quick. Even Joe Rogan on his podcast, when he's not just doing these pump-up things for the UFC, he talks about Khabib all the time of being this guy that's never lost a single minute of any fight ever. But then when he's calling that fight, he clearly says T-Bow wins the whole time. Mm-hmm. You just forget about stuff like that. I mean, that was 6 fights. That was 6 years ago, probably about 6 fights ago for Khabib, because he had a bunch of long layoffs from injury.
Khabib fought 6 times in 6 years?
I don't have the exact number, but yes, something like that. That's the other thing we forget. People are acting like Conor was ducking Khabib. I think Khabib has either gotten hurt or missed weight for 6 fights.
So you're saying this fight isn't going to happen next week?
It's a very real possibility.
That fight you said was in 2012. Okay, he's had 8 fights since then.
So 8. So in 6 years, he's had 8 fights.
Okay.
Conor hasn't even been in the UFC that long, has he?
I was going to say,
no, not since 2012.
And he's had, I think, 11 fights in the UFC.
Yeah, no, he hasn't been in there near that long.
Conor's just really, really good at talking his way up the ladder.
I don't want to. Well, if you look at their records, you could look at which one aged better. So Khabib beat RDA. RDA is really his best win because Glayson's dropped a bunch.
RDA?
Rafael Dos Anjos.
Okay.
Pat Bam Bam Healy, David Horcher, who was a last-minute turn-in. So their careers have aged. Conor's has aged amazing. He beat Dustin Poirier. He beat Max Holloway. He beat Jose Aldo. His career, his wins have aged like wine, whereas Khabib's have aged like fruit.
Beer.
No, some beers can age pretty well. So
you have that.
I'm glad that you saw the same things as us that kind of break down the fight a little more strategic as opposed to like a fan watching, especially an older fight. I'm glad just a normal Joe Schmo that doesn't know a whole lot can watch that fight and be like, how did he win that
fight? Conor, 10 fights in the UFC in about 3.5 years. And then we obviously, like, he had the year-long layoff, which, was built in. And it's almost going to be on 2 years whenever the fight happens. But I am glad that you actually saw that. Because I think it's pretty obvious.
I was really shocked. Like, if they said that, I was sitting there thinking, okay, I'm going to watch... I said, okay, I'm going to watch the last 20 seconds, just had a formality to see something happen. Just okay, I knew this was gonna win, but then I can't hear the sound. Next thing I know, the Japanese referee's raising Khabib's hand. Khabib starts crying. I'm like, what the hell's going on?
He's crying because he lost.
Yeah.
So to jump back into it, and we're going to do our breakdown. So I'll be quick with this. So we talked about Ramzan Kadyrov, the Chechen president, the other guy, the oligarch. Then you got this actually MMA manager who late LC tried to email this fella, and I told you I always tease him on Twitter because this dude's always talking about beating somebody's ass. He's a manager. You don't usually hear professional guys in the sport talk like this, but he's been talking about beating Conor's ass for like 5 years now.
Ali has?
Ali legitimately. I'll beat your ass. Like, he says this to everybody. So at the end, when they're getting to do the stare down, Ali says something to Conor, and Conor goes after him, and he calls him a terrorist snitch and starts talking about some other stuff. So you could look Ali up for about 2 seconds and find out this dude's another, I don't want to say a dirty dude like a Don King. He's a bad guy. This dude got arrested in 2002 for like suspicion of terrorism, and he turned an informant to the NYPD and the FBI, and he was informing on a terrorist group out of Virginia called the Muslims of America.
Holy smokes.
And he actually got in trouble because they said he was trying to deceive him. They thought he was what they called a double agent. It took me 2 seconds to Google the stuff and look it up. This dude,
Wow.
This dude is a legitimate.
I can tell you he isn't going to be talking any more trash on Twitter to him.
I'm not saying.
I know.
The first thing I thought was, I've been teasing this guy for like the first day I got a Twitter. I think I teased the dude.
Yeah, you've been poking the bear.
If I see any Russian dudes in our area, I'm calling up all my cousins. I mean, they won't last long here with a bunch of hillbilly Mexican cousins. But if I say I take me a trip somewhere, I gotta watch my back.
Yeah,
So-
and that's crazy. I didn't know that about him.
The other thing that's kind of crazy about him is, so his fight, like Nick.
We're in his emails now.
Yeah, so we've sent him. We're on the watch list now.
We emailed him.
We tracked that email.
I guarantee Sauce on the Side was already on the terrorist watch list because of Fletch, because he's always going at Don Trump.
He is.
Now we're definitely on it because we're also trying to be buddied up with Ali. But seriously, he's really a loved manager by his fighters, from what they say. Nick Newell, the fighter with one arm.
Oh, yeah.
There's a whole bunch of fighters under his umbrella that have said nothing but good things. He's also known as a guy that gets his guys paid a little bit more than other guys. And I mean, when you're just the style he is, it's probably easier to get people paid. He's got some connections with another dictator, an Arabian guy, which I didn't look into too much. The most telling thing about Ali to me was so that Ramzan Kadyrov, the Chechen president, the real crazy dude, his fighters, guess who their managers are?
Ali.
Ali. The only fighters that come from that guy's promotion, which I told you were tough promotions, the only fighters that we see that come from his promotion to the UFC, to Bellator, to any of these other promotions, are through Ali. He's the only one who manages those guys.
Wow.
So
Dude, that's crazy. If you wanted the Conor Khabib breakdown of the presser, you got it.
It's insanity. Whenever he was saying that, I knew little bits of backgrounds about these guys, little tiny bits. But when Conor started saying that stuff, I instantly knew this is more to Khabib now. Khabib can't lose to Conor now. He cannot. He's got an Irish guy talking about he's friends with Putin and his dad's a coward and fake friends with Putin, and this Kadyrov guy out of fear, and Conor's their buddy, and he knows what'll happen if he loses or shows up. The only thing that he could put pressure on Khabib with was probably something that maybe I bet you his coaches and friends were like, tread lightly on that stuff, because he lives in Europe. I mean, that ain't far from Russia. That ain't far from Dagestan, Chechnya. but he did it, and he went so over the top with it that it got under Khabib's skin, and you could tell. And I was getting nervous. Dana White put it perfectly. He said that was the darkest press conference he has ever been a part of. And me watching it, I was like, this has some implications outside of fighting that maybe Conor wasn't like fully like taken in, but maybe he was.
Yeah, and I had actually watched the presser with somebody who's not like, not as in tune to that stuff, and the whole time they're like, oh, he's just loudmouth, he's just yelling stuff. But he wasn't. It was tactical.
He was doing tactical digs mixed in with bragging about how Proper 12 is going to be on the canvas. And another thing he did really good is he kind of just went right into the bus stuff. They asked him about the bus. He didn't shy away from it. He just said, I'm glad he didn't get off the bus because that man had been dead and I'd been in a jail cell.
Yes.
And that
had me laughing. I was in tears.
See, when I watched it, I'm like, oh my God, I cannot believe he just said that.
Yes.
It was. So guess how many viewers watched that?
Probably more than any UFC card this year.
4 million.
4 million.
4 million people watch that pay-per-view. That they can count. That they're averaging right now. They're thinking the fight's going to sell about 2.5 million just on pre-sales and stuff. It doubled. The press conference doubled what they're expecting to sell the fight for.
Wow, a great presser. And it's hard to say. Just visually watching Khabib, it didn't seem like he got rattled until obviously started bringing this up, and it was a guy that we had never seen before. Yeah, a guy that we had never seen before. Yeah. And
it was intense.
Very, very intense. It. Whenever he stood up, I was like, Conor's going to win this fight. As soon as Khabib stood up, I'm like, Conor's going to win this fight.
What did you think was going to happen when Conor was trying to hand him that whiskey?
Oh, I thought he was going to throw it at him.
I did too. Dana was like kind of like right there. I was like, if he doesn't I think that's why Dana did the shot, because had he not taken that, I think Conor was going to flick it in his face.
Yeah.
But Dana's like, oh, just give me, I need 2 of these. Pour me another one.
You actually texted me during it. It's like Dana is the friend of the wild man at the bar that's just taking shots just to appease this man to get him to get them both out alive. And Dana handled it well. It looked like Dana's been in that situation before, and just like a classic vet, man, he just pops the shot and goes on with it.
He says, this is good. This is good.
I will say, though, not trying to give you a 5-minute ad read that Conor McGregor was giving you during the presser. I had the Proper 12. It is very, very good, and it was surprisingly good. And it's priced at a good... It's marketed to us.
What's the bottle? What's the price?
I bought it for $21.
So he said it was a direct competitor to Jameson. That's about right? Jameson's about in
well,
there.
I had 2 other guys that are big Jameson guys try it. The one said it was better than Jameson, and the other guy said Conor McGregor can continue to make millions without fighting. Those were their 2 direct quotes, 2 biggest Jameson guys I've ever met. So
one of them's redheaded, isn't he?
Absolutely,
of course.
So do you want to break down a little bit like of their previous fights, or do you want to kind of save that for next week?
All right, guys. I just had my first countdown ever. I'm feeling a little embarrassed. I talked too long. About all that.
No, you didn't. You had to say
stuff.
It because everything tied back in at the end.
I think it's going to make it that much better for people. We are going to save our breakdown for next week because we won't have any fights really to talk about. We'll touch on 206. Let's save our breakdown for next week. And what I would like to do, and what I would like to do for listeners, is just basically what Conor's good at, and what he needs to do to win, and what Khabib's good at, and what he needs to do to win, and then vice versa. That'll show what both guys are bad at and needs to do, and then we'll make our ultimate picks next week. Basically, next week's show is just going to be
Conor Khabib beat you to death with it. Yeah. Okay, I'm completely down for that. So. Very interesting headline this week. Nate Diaz comes out and says that him and Poirier are going to be fighting for like the super fight belt or something, and that they're a new division in the UFC, 165 pounds. Apparently, Uncle Dana did not know anything about this, which is an important guy to have in on this group discussion. What's your takeaway from that?
I don't know. This mixes in with our other little headline we wrote down about John Jones versus USADA and that card that Diaz and Poirier is on. So Dana typically doesn't lie about like, hey, is this fight going on, and just lie about it. The only time I can remember that happening was actually with the Conor Khabib. Somebody asked him, hey, is that Conor Khabib fight almost signed? And he said, we're almost there. And then at the end of the press conference, he said, sorry, I lied. Here's the video. That's the only time I can ever think of him just flat lying.
So he lied for like 30 seconds.
Yeah, he lied for about 20 minutes, and it pissed off Diaz, and he left. So you can look at it two ways. Either Diaz is telling the truth, which we don't know Diaz to lie.
No.
He's
the biggest straight
tells
shooter.
it what it is.
Yes, good or bad, he's a straight
good or
shooter.
bad. Yeah, exactly right. I mean, so his tweet basically just said, I'd like to announce that me and Poirier are moving to the main event. It's going to be a 5-round fight for the newly minted 165-pound championship, which is getting a ton of push by fighters, by media, by just about everybody but Dana. And then Poirier likewise followed up with a tweet and said, me and Nate are going to put on a good show, something. Well, then you had there's a couple. So in the MMA media, there's a bunch of shit out there. I'm not saying that to be mean. There's a bunch of junk out there
because they don't have an Adrian Wojnarowski. They just dropping Woj bombs on people.
There's really, it's such a new sport, and it used to be a lot worse than what it is now. And you're getting some credentialed journalists in now, but I mean, you get people just write bull. They'll just write bull and put it out there, and people will read it and think it's right. Well, Brett Okamoto, who I think works for ESPN, put out. There's a couple guys: Okamoto, Ariel Helwani, Chael Sonnen's another one that I listen to a lot. Brendan Schaub gets a lot of info. Now, past those guys, even like a Joe Rogan, he doesn't put out a lot of stuff that he hears, but he goes off speculation a lot. So I don't take anything he says to heart either. But when a guy like Okamoto or Helwani tweets out like, hey, I just spoke to Sean Shelby and some other guys, and they're saying that's absolutely not true, or I just spoke to Dana White and he doesn't know anything about it, I believe them too. I believe that's what they're being told. I think that maybe they don't want to announce this until after Conor Khabib, or on that night, because that's when they're going to have 2.5 million eyeballs, to sell that card. You don't have to sell that card. You can say you can run a 30-minute spot in a week and a half, and bust it out. So I think that there's a good chance that they're both telling the truth, and then they're trying to wait to drop it until October 6th. That right after the Khabib and Conor fight, bam, here's our next fight.
I think that how sometimes they'll announce fights during that. Mm-hmm. I think they'll kind of do like a fight announcement right before Conor Khabib walk out there and say, hey, we're starting a 65-pounder.
Yeah, I think that's the best way. Like I said, you'll never get more eyeballs. That's supposed to be the biggest selling MMA fight, one of the biggest pay-per-views of all time, and across the board. So, the John Jones USADA thing did wrap up the other day, but I don't know that there's still some red tape and stuff for him to get through, from what I understand, from what I've listened to his manager talk about in the last couple of days. So I'm not looking to see him on that card anymore. I've got to think that Diaz wasn't lying, Poirier wasn't lying, that's going to get moved to the main event, because the card's already stacked. To me, I was so surprised that Diaz Poirier wasn't the headliner. To me, that was a headliner with everything else, and it was perfect. Maybe they're just wanting to throw that belt on there just because it's New York, it's New York.
But this is something that's going to affect the whole entire UFC for years to come. I hope that this isn't a knee-jerk.
It's a good thing, right? It's a good effect.
I think so, but then if you do this, you're going to ultimately have to open up like a 195.
That would be, there's a lot of speculation and talk of other divisions. To me, I think a 95 would be good, and I think like a 2...
And healthy.
Like a 230.
For a guy like Sam Alvey, just like you talked about earlier. Yeah. Shouldn't be fighting 205, but does he want to cut 20 pounds?
I think if they could make the sport better to me, I think they add that 95. They add either probably a 225, I would say, a 225 or 235, and then a heavyweight. And I think we're set. I don't think we need a million weight classes like boxing. I think those pretty much round up everybody. Now you already, Darren Till with his weight stuff and all that, some guy in his camp already tweeted, by the way, Darren can make 65.
Oh, no.
You're like, hold on. Dude almost died making 70. He's
Yeah.
almost guaranteed an 85-pounder within the year, within 2019. So there will be those guys that try that. There will be those guys that are like, ooh, I'm making 70, but I'm not the biggest guy, but I'm shredded to the bone, and try and hit that 65 mark. But there's going to be fewer of those guys than guys like Kevin Lee who need that extra 10 pounds. Another one talked. I just heard Johnny.
I don't want this to be a knee-jerk reaction like, hey, we're doing this because we don't have a belt on this card.
Yeah.
And that would be terrible because the way you look at it now, why do you need a 65 if you have a 70 right there? It's a 5-pound difference. If you're wanting to put it,
it's a lot though.
but if you're wanting to make that a jump from 55 to 65, make it like a 62. Something right in the middle. That way now your hand's going to be forced. Well, we have a 65, we have a 55. What about a 60? I mean, when does it stop is what I'm saying. And I think the way to put a hard stop between those weight classes would be, hey, 8 pounds to the next one and 7 pounds to the one below it. Yeah. So that way it makes it even. I don't think you have to have 100. They don't have to.
Sounds better.
Yes, that's the only reason that they're going to do that.
I can't do the math. You're talking about 7s and 8s. I got to have 5s and 10s.
Well, I think that it should be a 62.
Yeah.
I think that if they're going to add one,
I could do that. I think. I don't know. I think they'll probably stick with 65 though.
I hope that's not the case.
If this is true, I don't want to say it's a knee-jerk reaction though, because people have been.
But
talking
then you
about
have to
this.
make a 60.
Diego Sanchez has been talking about this for 15 years because he's too big to stay at 55. He even tried to hit. He even did a freaking featherweight fight once and looked like Skeletor. There's been guys really. There's just been a lot of what they call tweeners,
No, and I agree.
They're not 70s and they're not 55s, but they got to fight in one of them.
And I think I do like them adding the weight classes. I do. Don't think that I'm against that. But I think that if you're making a jump 10 pounds up, but 5 pounds is the next one, I think that's cutting it too close. I think you need to lower that mark. That way those tweeners are actually... have a weight class of their own, because I feel like 65 is too close to 70, where you're going to have all these guys just trying to push to get down to 65.
I could see that.
So I think that they should make it a little harder bar to reach, get it 62. I think that would be fair, because then I think that if you do this, you're going to open up an avenue to end up ultimately having a 60, and then a 65, then a 70, and then a 75, then an 80.
We definitely don't need that many classes.
Because
I would be okay with 3 more, but not like boxing when they... boxing essentially has a weight class every freaking 3 pounds or something. It's pretty nuts.
Yeah, because now you're in the mark where 55, the jump between 45 and 55 is now going to be higher than 65 to 70. And that's not fair. I think that you add 3 weight classes, you could easily throw in a 62, which would make the most sense. And then, you can throw in, because then it'd be 70 to 85, throw in something right in the middle there, too. So
I seen a number. I think Kevin Lee posted it out. I think there's like 500 and... But just to round up, I think there's like 550 fighters on the UFC roster. I want to say there was just a touch over 100 of those, or close to 100 of those, were in that 155-pound weight class.
that's unreal. That's a lot.
So, that's... I think he actually put like 80 to 100 of those.
You know why that is, though? Because the division's been so wonky with the Tony Ferguson and Khabib all having to pull out of fights.
Yeah, I agree.
That's a bummer.
Did you check out anything about the John Jones USADA thing?
No, I haven't. The only thing I've really looked into was just basically that Dana White stood up there on the presser and said he shot our dreams down of John Jones being on the MSG card.
So he got... Essentially, he went to arbitration. He was up for a 2 to 4 year ban. This is a guy who's had 3 strikes against him, 3 positive tests. One of those was for cocaine. He basically got time served. He got 15 months time served. So you look at other guys. B.J. Penn got sick, went to the hospital, got an IV. He got banned 2 years. Nick Diaz got a lifetime ban for having a tiny baby amount of marijuana in his system, THC in his system. Tim Means got 6 months. There's the 3 guys I can tell you that have a case that are most like this one is Tim Means, Yoel Romero, and Josh Barnett. Tim Means was taking a creatine or something that was perfect on the USADA list, took it, popped hot, took his sample in, found out it was contaminated. They got new samples from the company, tested it, found out they were contaminated. Basically found out he took a substance that was 100% legal that was contaminated, and they still found him guilty and suspended him 6 months on his first strike. Same thing happened to Yoel Romero. Josh Barnett, a guy that had 1 strike a long, long time ago, and another when steroids were 100% legal, another one a couple years back, and then this one, basically the same thing. Tested all his stuff, couldn't find it, had no idea what was in there. It was a tiny baby amount. They were offering him nothing less than a 2-year suspension, so he just waited it out. He waited out his contract, went to arbitration, just never came to an agreement. So basically, he just got out of the pool, no problem. Well, a lot of problems. He's been off 2 years, and then Jones got a guy with 2 positive tests, 3 strikes,
An admitted one, for sure.
Yeah, and they said, well, we have faith that he didn't mean to cheat, this and that. Come to find out, in the wording in his contract, basically he's snitching on people. It's in his in the thing that they wrote with USADA. He is to give ongoing. He has given and is ongoing given valuable information of substance and stuff. So I should have wrote down the wording exactly, but essentially he's an informant. He agreed to be an informant for USADA to get time served.
Wow.
And his manager was on a couple shows going nuts, Oh, he's not a snitch. That wording confused us all, blah, blah, blah. Look at it from a common sense point of view. They've thrown the book at people that have had 0 strikes whatsoever for having legal substances in them, for having, IVs but had too much IV saline put in, different stuff like that. And Jones gets let off on time served and is okay to fight again, and they're all cool. Now, John, the manager came out and said on Arrow Hawani's show, like, hey, that's not what it means. It confused us that he's not turning anybody in, blah, blah, blah. Now, USADA has this thing where they don't comment on people unless they comment on them. So they immediately put out a thing and said, no, John has given us information already and will continue to do so, or we will bring him back in to redo the arbitration. So I don't know who he's tattling on, either people in his gym, either the people.
He's that bad neighborhood kid that you just figure, like, how in the world are they still out here walking the streets?
Yep, that's how. You can watch a million cop movies. They never inform on people below him. He's going to be informing on people above him. I did. Chael Sonnen, kind of came up. He said this, and I didn't think about it until he said it. He said he thinks maybe John's giving him information about the NFL. And that's not far of a stretch because 2 of his brothers play for the NFL.
Holy smokes.
And have had substance abuse problems with the NFL also. So can you imagine all these people getting busted in the NFL for all these? Think Balco. We could have a Balco here.
Yeah. That's crazy.
Balco.
That's
Except
crazy.
We'll call it Jones-Co.
Jones-Co. Jonesgate. No, if it's involved with the NFL, it has to be Gate.
Yeah,
so
I like it.
It'll be Jonesgate.
You know what?
What about Bonesgate?
If Barstool prints off those shirts, I'm going after him. I'm getting a lawyer.
Bonesgate.
Heard it here first.
That's crazy. I didn't know anything about that. Well, you've blown my mind on multiple occasions.
This is the theory the theory show. This is the conspiracy theory show.
Yeah, but I don't even know if they're conspiracy theories.
No,
I think
they're
they're
all
just
legit.
Yeah, they're all legit.
They're all legit.
Wow. So anything else before we taper off and look forward till next week?
Get ready for Connor v. Khabib, baby. I'm pumped up. I'm talking Irish. We're drinking proper 12. I'm punching my heavy bag southpaw all week.
And on that note, for Drake, for Shackelford, and our producer, Pip Shaventone, Dippers, as always, stay saucy.
Adios.